We aren't here simply to be visible. We are here to be victorious.
Since 2019, the National Trans Visibility March has been bringing together thousands of community members and allies in a historic march through our nation's capital, all in a united effort to make our voices heard. Now, as the march prepares for its 7th year, the fight for rights is entering a new era, pioneered by a decorated community leader.
I am so grateful to step into a position that is of deep importance to me. We can no longer be unseen, unheard, and uninvolved. The time is now to unite as a community and stand tall.
Join us June 3rd through the 8th as we celebrate our strides and create a future we can be proud of.
Hello, 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 everybody. Happy Monday. Happy National Trans Visibility March Monday. I just totally made that up. I'm Dr. Elijah Nicholas. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the lead strategy director for the National Trans Visibility March. And we are joined this week by our friends over at the Transgender Law Center. Welcome, Heron. How are you doing today?
I am so good. Thank you so much, Dr. Elijah, for having us.
Listen, we are so excited to have you all over at the Trans Law Center, affectionately known as TLC. We're so excited to have you all with us. And I want to just get right into this. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about the Transgender Law Center. And then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts, if you will, of really what's happening in the world today. So who are you?
My name is Heron Greensmith. I am the Deputy Director of Policy at TLC. I live in Boston. I'm an attorney, and I run our policy shop at Trans Law Center, where we work on local, state, and federal policy, legislation, regulatory policy, all the way up, all the way down. TLC is the largest trans-led organization in the country, working to set all people free. So we champion the rights of trans and gender non-conforming people to make their own choices, to live freely. We prioritize BIPOC, disabled, HIV-positive communities. We advance community-driven strategies that harness trans power, trans knowledge, and trans joy to ensure that we not only survive, but we thrive at all ages and all phases of our life.
You know what? I love that. I love all the work that y'all doing, and especially that one thing you said, not about thriving. It's not just about surviving. We want to get to the point in life where we're all thriving, right?
That's
And
right.
that is the purpose of our conversations that we're having every Monday right now, leading up to the National Trans Visibility March, which is this June 3rd through the 8th in Washington, D.C. We hope you all will join us. I will say this several times during our live today. Please go to our website, ntvmarch.org, and register, because believe it or not, we have limited capacity, and we want to make sure that everyone who desires to attend has the opportunity to attend. And now this time is more important than ever for the work that we do and the work that you all are doing over at TLC. And so let's talk about what's happening at the federal level. You know, there's so many, I don't even know what number executive order we're on. Honestly, I think it's fair to say that this is the largest number of executive orders within the first 100 days of a sitting president. I think I can safely say that. And so where do we start with people, for someone who is like, what's going on? Where do we start? What's happening at the federal level, and then what's happening with executive orders? Break it down for me, so I can understand, please.
Sure. Yeah, so this administration has really decided from day one, from January 20th, to start attacking bodily autonomy, really, for populations across the country, and has decided that transgender and non-binary people are one of those populations whom they're going to attack. So we've seen multiple executive actions, executive orders, proclamations that attack bodily autonomy, that attack freedom, that attack autonomy for trans people, non-binary people, intersex people, and gender non-conforming people across the country. I'll go through a couple of them if that's interesting, but also we don't want to spend too much time bogging down in all the negative details. So I'd love to also share with you about how we're working to make sure that all trans and non-binary folks can thrive right now and can make the decisions they need to live freely and fiercely and to live into their own bodily autonomy. But starting from January 20th, the president issued an executive action that really set the tone for the next couple months and the next couple weeks. And that was this executive order that defined sex, right? So according to the federal government now, there are only two sexes. Sex is binary. The federal government has been ordered. I say it like that because executive actions aren't law, right? They're just kind of these wish lists from the president to his agencies. And as we know, and I'm sorry for getting a little bit ahead of myself, but as we know, each of these executive actions is now being challenged at the federal courts by organizations, individuals across the country, including TLC. But this first executive action that really set the stage told the executive agencies, so we're talking about Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Education, Department of Justice, that for purposes of federal law, there's only two sexes, according to this administration, that those sexes can't be changed. And I apologize for using language like that. That all government issued IDs have to have listed one's sex assigned at birth, including passports, for example, that in federal employment records can only reflect one's sex assigned at birth. That folks who are in places of incarceration can only be housed according to their sex assigned at birth, for example. And then it went on from there. So on the 27th of January, the next executive order that directly implicates trans people was the executive order saying that trans service members cannot serve openly anymore. And we phrase it like that because we know that there are trans service members serving in every branch of the military, and they're being told essentially that their bodily autonomy is not worth respecting right now by the federal government. Moving on, we know that the president has been attacking DEI, or, as we actually like to talk about it, attacking real education, attacking history, attacking, like the lived experiences of people working and going to school across the country. And then in his executive order, talking about radical indoctrination in K through 12 schooling, the president explicitly said that schools are indoctrinating children with radical gender and race theory. Language like this is such a dog whistle to white supremacists, to white Christian globalists, to folks across the country and across the world who truly believe that when we shrink bodily autonomy, then somehow that equals more freedom. But we know that when we increase bodily autonomy for everyone, that's when folks, like you said, can truly thrive. I'll touch on a couple more of the orders, and then I want to turn it over to you, obviously, to shake us out of this place and ask us some more questions. On the 5th of February, the president issued an order saying that trans women should not be allowed to play sports according to their gender, and trans girls should not be allowed to play sports according to their gender. And I really want to emphasize that this is little girls playing sports. And women who have worked their whole lives to get to an elite level of athletics, who are now not permitted to participate in sports, to play with their friends, to compete according to their gender identity. And then last, I wanted to touch on the vast number, like you said, of executive orders that don't necessarily talk about trans people, but we know that they are implicating trans folks. And we're talking about the executive orders that, for example, declare a national emergency at the border. We know there are trans migrants. We know there are folks who are struggling to get into the United States because they have faced persecution abroad, and they deserve to be able to come safely and freely into the United States. And the federal government is attacking migrants coming across the border, trying to access asylum, trying to access just a safe place to live. And we at TLC believe that we all deserve to be able to find a loving, home in which we can thrive no matter where we live.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And wow, that's so much. And we're less than 100 days into, this current administration. And so what I want to pause and say is we have to take this in stages and steps and breathe. And that's, one of our purposes for doing these lives at the march each Monday is really to help people pause and really help give an understanding of what's happening, because there was so much information so fast, and what it did and does is kind of put people in this place of confusion and like this whirlwind and like what's going on. And so we decided to do these virtual activations, these weekly webinars, to really just pause and call in our partners and have you all help us understand and explain what's happening. And so thank you so much for explaining all of those executive orders. One thing that came up for me at the very beginning, the very first executive order that you mentioned, I saw on social media just last night, I don't remember what state it was in, but during the testimony, one individual was asking one of the state representatives about these, because let me preface this with, because what is happening is many states have followed what the federal executive orders are, so it's kind of verbatim language, right? And so now we have these conversations on the state level, or have had over the last 40 days during open legislation. And so this person who was testifying asked the representative, what about intersex people? Where do intersex people fall in this statement of binary, right? And the answer was blatantly incorrect as far as what is intersex. I don't know if he saw that or not, but my point in bringing this up is there are people making these decisions about our bodies who have no clue about our bodies, right? And so how do we navigate that? Because there's like I said, many of these people writing these proposed bills have no idea, not just about a trans person or a non-binary gender non-conforming person, but also not about intersex people. So much so that this person said basically that intersex people don't exist. And we know that that is not true. So how do we, how do we, and this is just kind of, conversationally, how do we navigate that space?
I mean, you raised such a good point about their ignorance about our bodies, and I think that extends beyond trans people, beyond non-binary people, beyond intersex people, to just not knowing about science, right? Or ignoring science and medical consensus in favor of ideology, in
Hmm.
favor of a white Christian kind of globalist, nationalist globalist ideology that prioritizes a certain person, a certain family above
Hmm.
others. And I'll just be blatant. These
Hmm.
ideologies privilege white, cisgender, nuclear families
Hmm.
over other families. And we also know, thanks to data and thanks to science, that the United States is comprised of far broader
Hmm.
spectrum of families than is being prioritized and privileged by the executive actions right now. In fact, we know that nuclear families now comprise a minority of families in the United States. Families instead are made of, folks that are queer, folks who are
Hmm.
blended families, step parents, grandparents raising kids,
Right.
siblings living together, folks raising each other's children, aunties, and
Hmm.
it's not just trans non-binary folks, as you exactly said, it's all of us who are going to be impacted by these orders.
Hmm.
And then just to talk very briefly about intersex people, we know there are trans intersex people and non-trans intersex people. And what we have seen, exactly like you said, is that there is a complete erasure of intersex people at the federal conversational level right now. Not only are intersex people erased by these orders, but in fact, some of the mirror laws at the state level actually exempt intersex folks from prohibitions on gender confirming affirming care,
Mm.
meaning that intersex people, intersex babies are being operated on non-consensually. So
Mm.
doctors can choose to perform what they think as gender affirming care on intersex babies without their consent, whereas trans and non-binary people are not able to access gender affirming care. It is
Wow.
truly a contradiction, I think, that illustrates the ignorance at the level of this discourse.
Wow. That's so unfortunate. And it's knowledge that we need to have and be armed with so that we can move forward. And speaking of moving forward, let's talk about some of the things that you all are doing over at TLC to make this a better situation for all of us, right? What do you all have going? How are you meeting the moment right now? And what's rising to the top for you all?
Thank you for this question. I think that TLC has always stood with our communities and known that when we prioritize ourselves and our leadership and our knowledge, we can thrive. So right now, number one is continuing to support our communities, continuing to pour into leaders on the ground who can then continue to support their organizations and their communities. We're providing information to people about the executive actions, about what's going on at their state level, so that they can make informed decisions about what they need to thrive. Um, we've had a series of community conversations, not unlike this, talking about Black resistance and excellence, talking about Trans Day of Visibility, talking about the executive actions. Coming up, we're going to be talking about deaf and disabled trans folks, and then talking about a very important Supreme Court decision coming out of Tennessee that's going to decide whether or not states can provide or can ban gender affirming care for youth across the states. So really what we're doing is making sure folks have all the information they need to make decisions about their thriving and their autonomy, and then pouring information, pouring skills, and pouring cash. We have worked with the Emergent Fund to provide $2 million to folks on the ground in smaller organizations, so that we're really injecting resources to where we need it most right now, which is leaders on the ground.
That is, I'm so glad you said that, right? Thank you for all of that information. And I would say, in talking to trans leaders around, really not just in the United States, but around the world right now, resources is the biggest need. It's the greatest need, because we all see what's happening with the result of the new administration, job losses, and all the things, fundings shifting and being frozen. And at the heart of the grassroots work, many people are being hit the hardest, right? There are organizations that, quite honestly, are on their last bit of resources. And so, thank you, TLC, for doing that, for injecting resources, because we absolutely need that. We need more organizations doing that. So, thank you all for, leading the way with that, because it's what's going to help us continue to do the work on the ground and help us get through this time by helping and reaching the people who need it the most. So thank you all so much for doing that. And so, can you talk about the transgender liberation? I want to hear more about the transgender liberation and how this agenda moves us, how this agenda teaches us in the movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to drop the link in the chat here in the comments so folks can access it too. And I think we'll have that running below our faces here too. So the Trans Agenda for Liberation really addresses the when we wrote it, we said it addressed the urgent political, legal, and social violence enacted against our communities. And right now, that could not be more true. So the trans agenda grows out of work that communities and individuals are already doing, and points to the work that still needs to get done. So there's 5 pillars to the trans agenda. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but I'll tell you what the 5 of them are right now. And I'm sure that you'll have questions and kind of be sparked, because they're so evocative of what we need to thrive, as we keep going back to. The first pillar is Black trans women and Black trans femmes leading and living fiercely. We truly believe that when we pour into leadership of those who are at the forefront of our movement, we can succeed. The second pillar is Beloved Home. Trans people belong, period, point blank. We demand a movement that honors Indigenous folks, migrant folks, Two-Spirit people, by centering their leadership where they are and not asking folks to move to be safer, right? We deserve to be able to live where we want to live and thrive there. The third pillar is intergenerational connection and lifelong care. As we say in the agenda, our communities are only as strong as our relationships and our care for trans people of every age. We deserve to have folks like Miss Major. We deserve to have hundreds of Miss Majors still living, right? And those among us, we need to pour into their leadership. We need to give them their roses while they're still alive. And we need to honor the elders that came before us, and make sure we're building up our youth and our current leaders so that they can become our elders too. The fourth pillar is defining ourselves. Our bodies are our own. HIV positive people deserve to be able to craft their own care so that they can live. Deaf and disabled people deserve to be able to access what they need to thrive. We demand the freedom to define ourselves and our futures free from those non-consensual procedures that I was talking about that intersex people face, and free from gatekeeping. We deserve to be able to access the care that we need to thrive when we need it. And that brings me to the fifth pillar, which is the freedom to thrive. And this pillar really talks about living a life without cages. We know that there are trans and non-binary and intersex people in cages across the country, in prisons, in jails, in migrant detention, people who are in sex work economies, people who face violence and harm because of the jobs that they decide that they need to have to thrive. We deserve not only freedom from cages, but we actually deserve active community support in building our lives for ourselves, building our families for ourselves on our own terms. So that's the trans agenda for liberation. And it really is inserted into everything that we do, pouring into leadership, making sure that we all have the freedom to thrive, making sure that we have access to the resources that we need to be able to thrive where we live.
Mhm. Wow, listen, that is amazing. That's some great stuff, and I love how you have that outline, and I love how your TLC is really pointing to just the things that help us have longevity, like in life. You know what I'm saying? It's not just not just today, but it's tomorrow and so on, and building elders from our youth. You know, I something that stood out to me and it gives me chills is like when you said we want our youth to become elders. So many of us as trans folks, we don't even get to think that far because we're concerned about today and living in today. And so thank you for breaking that down and for doing that. And I want to lift up the very first pillar about our black, how did you say it? Black trans femme queens? Did I get it close?
Black trans women and femmes living and leading fiercely.
Fiercely,
Yes.
yes. I'm so appreciative of that because one of the things that I think has been lost, if you will, in all of what's happening right now is the high rates of trigger warning, murders of our black and brown trans women. That conversation has really been buried intentionally or not. And so that I'm so glad to hear that like that's the first pillar. So we keep that at the forefront. And I love that we're shifting and really reclaiming. What I got is reclaiming the narrative and defining, who we are, who we desire to be, and not just who we desire to be, but who we're going to be as we age and as we tap into our youth. So I'm going to study that agenda some more. I absolutely love that. Where can people find that agenda and also more information about you all?
Yeah, join us at transgenderlawcenter.org. And then there's a little link at the top in our banner that says the trans agenda. And if you are looking for the direct link, it's transgenderlawcenter.org/trans agenda for liberation.
Yes.
But please just visit transgenderlawcenter.org and you'll find it right there.
Yes, thank you so much. So, as we wrap up, Heron, can you just talk a little bit about why it's important for TLC to partner with the National Trans Visibility March right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it just goes back to everything we've been saying in this conversation, pouring into leadership, pouring into community, making sure that we're educating our communities so that we have the information that we need to make good choices about where we want to live, the healthcare we want to access, the jobs that we want to be able to live without cages, and then also just to be visible and to be visible to an administration that is trying so hard to erase us. We need to stand up and say, actually, we're here, and not only are we here, we're everywhere. So that's
Yes.
why it's important for me to join us, and I know that TLC agrees.
Yes, thank you so much. And we're here and we're everywhere and we're not going anywhere. And that is, the purpose of this year's march and all of our events. Again, I want to direct folks to the marches page, ntvmarch.org. Make sure that you get registered for the Policy and Safety Summit. And I'm looking forward to more of these conversations. As we get to the march, we're going to continue to have more of these conversations every Monday at noon with our partners like TLC. And I just want to say that, as the march, National Trans Visibility March, continues to grow, our goal is to have more conversations like this and to really bring all of these key players to the table so that we can now write our policies. We control the narrative. We're not relying on research that has now been taken down from, government sites. We will author our own research. We will pioneer our research, and we'll define by bringing intelligent folks like yourself, Aaron, and all the team at TLC and ACLU and Lavender Rights and all of our amazing partners over at NMAC, to begin to develop or to continue to develop the agenda that you all have so eloquently defined. And then we'll get into, how do we get our trans and non-binary folks into these key decision-making positions. It's no secret that there is not enough trans, non-binary, and intersex folks in the political pipeline. Right. That's why we have folks like I referenced earlier in the segment who are writing these bills and have no clue about the trans and non-binary and intersex experience. And so that is our goal going forward, is to really to be the leader in policy and strategy and research and to house all of this information. So we got a lot of great things coming. We're so grateful for the partnership with TLC. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for partnering with us. And we look forward to seeing you all June 3rd through the 8th in partnership with World Pride, Capital Pride in Washington, D.C. Let me tell you, this is a year for you all to come and join the march. This is the year. And I want to say, we need our allies and our partners, our accomplices. We need our families, our friends. We need everybody to march arm in arm with us, to sit at the table with us, and to strategize with us. And we're so grateful for TLC. What parting words do you have, Heron, as we leave our viewers today, and for those who may listen to the replay?
Oh, I'm just so excited to be at the march. What is it, June 4th through 9th, 5th through 9th?
Yeah, June 5th through 9th, 3rd and 4th travel days, or 5th through 8th. The march is actually on the 8th. That is the day that
Excellent.
we will march arm in arm, hand in hand, and
I
really
can't wait.
let Washington, D.C. know that we are here. We are not going anywhere, and I love how you said that we are everywhere.
We are
We
everywhere.
have to get what is that called, a chant during the march with that, like seriously. So
Yes, absolutely.
awesome. Where can folks reach you? You want to give contact information?
Absolutely. Yeah. Shoot me an email at heron@transgenderlawcenter.org if you want to chat work. And if you want to just hang out, find me on Blue Sky. I'm at Heron G.
Heron G, I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Heron G and TLC, for joining us today. Meet us right here, the National Trans Visibility March. We'll be right back next week. We're going to talk to our friends over at NMAC, and we're going to talk about immigration, and we're also going to talk about HIV prevention and care and what's happening as a result of all the changes in the U.S. right now. So thank you so much for joining us. Y'all have a wonderful day. Don't forget to go to ntvmarch.org. Get registered for the Policy and Safety Summit coming up this June. Take care, y'all.
You ready to march?
We are so excited to be here and to be in year 5. And I want to tell you that I thank you for being here. I love you guys. We will march. When I say trans, you say power. Trans, 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 trans.
I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary.